and clear of the building.
I can actually go down to the Mission sometimes and not feel like it's my neighborhood where I grew up at. I miss being able to be in the Mission without feeling like an outsider. Oh man, being a kid walking around the Mission, you would walk down the street, you'd see the old school zoot suiters, old school cholos, the low riders, boom boxes. I don't know how to describe it, man. It's just something, you felt at home.
And starting, back in 1979, at that time it was very vibrant commercial district, and I think it built up a reputation, even as far as El Salvador, of people saying, oh, that's a place you could go to live in San Francisco, and there's lots of Latino people there, and if you don't have enough English skills, you can still get along by speaking Spanish, and that's kind of what made it safe and inviting for many people.
The wars in Central America had another impact on San Francisco. The Latino population more than doubled in the 1980s as people fled the violence in their countries.
Melting pot for Latin people. It was like just a melting pot for all Latinos. I mean, whether it be Mexican, Salvadoran, Nicaraguan, Guatemalan, whatever, Honduran. It was a melting pot, and there was a little bit of everything for every culture.
So I grew up what is still Valencia and 15th. At the time was the Valencia Gardens projects that have since been demolished and rebuilt as sort of condo look-alike projects. But at the time, the neighborhood itself was actually a working class Latino neighborhood. A lot of families, a lot of bodegas, tiendas. I certainly don't remember a lot of homelessness. But the projects itself was pretty bad. Like within the 2 square block footprint of the projects, it was pretty bad in there. But outside, it was mostly working class.
It used to be a neighborhood where at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, do not walk that area, Now, it's like a party in the streets, and you're feeling as the outsider, and like, what the hell happened to this neighborhood?
There was a lot of, gang violence and drug usage and stuff like that, but it was still a fairly safe neighborhood.
Crack, 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 everywhere you go, crack.
It felt like a good place. I could take my kids to Dolores Park. It was definitely dedicated to families in that time. It wasn't the yuppie presence that it is kind of nowadays. And they had a lot more live music playing in the park back then. They played congas for hours and hours, and people would come and they would sing, and sometimes people would dancing along with it, and it just gave a really nice vibe to the whole park. I mean, I know that they were selling drugs in the park, but that didn't impact the playground part. That was kind of like the other part of the park. It didn't really mix. It's kind of different parts of the park.
It's changed a lot. I would say it's almost completely gone and different from when I grew up. It's just been like a economic warfare going on there, and just the community just hasn't gotten better. Schools didn't get better. The roads didn't get better.
You got all these people buying up buildings and driving people out, and that's what they're doing. They're changing the culture, trying to change the culture.
These days, you're more likely to see somebody wearing a tech company T-shirt than you are to see, blue-collar family taking their kids to school. Most of the new businesses that are going in are catering to a more upscale clientele. So there's far more of the local bodegas and taquerias that used to be sort of a staple of the Mission. Those places still exist, but by and large, they're becoming sort of vintage novelties as opposed to the sort of bread and butter, the economic backbone of the community.
It was a really great place to grow up. It's kind of sad to see that community go away.
It seems like 24th is trying to hang on to what they had, and that's good. But even around Mission from 24th down to on Mission to about 22nd, you see little things happening like the old Mission Theater. You see the sign, but that's not Mission Theater. Sad to see what it used to be, and it's no longer there.
Basically, my parents, I think, wanted a safer place for the kids to grow up, and so we actually upgraded to East Oakland, if you can believe that.
It was about 1985 when we first moved to Oakland. I had my fourth child, and we were not able to afford a larger space in San Francisco, so we moved over, and it was a neighborhood right next to a community elementary school, so it was perfect for my growing family that they could start from home and just walk across the street to go to school.
When I was like 1 year old, there was a bullet that flew through the house and like went right over the crib, and like it shot straight through the wall and out the other wall. The whole neighborhood was poor as shit. After I turned about 5 years old, we moved over to East 22nd Street with the cross street of 23rd. So it's a little bit further away, but much more in the trap. Like back in the day, I would say from like 1990 to about like 2000 something, 23rd Avenue was like notorious for the drug sales.
See the car pulled to the curb here? They're up there to make a buy, okay? And you hear them yelling rollers. Okay, there goes your drug dealer right there. They'll sell to anybody who has the money, regardless of age. Okay, this car up ahead of us obviously came up here to cop some dope. They saw us and got raised up and left.
At the time, it was pretty bad, in the busy intersections with the liquor store. There was a lot of drug dealing. There was a lot of crime, broad daylight crime. It was the kind of place kids didn't really want to go play. But there was always other parts of the neighborhood that were less hot.
The rec center up the street, where it was supposed to be a rec center, was the biggest dope spot of all of the places. The only things you could do there is shoot craps and buy drugs. The drugs ran the neighborhood.
If my husband wanted to go and feel like he was in El Salvador, he could walk down to the Fruitvale area and feel quite at home. I mean, I know it is a mixed community and there are other cultures there, but I don't think there is another part of Oakland that I would purposely seek out as being in the Spanish Center.
I think if you want to look at what the future is like for Fruitvale, you just look at the Mission today. And fast forward out 10, 12 years, the property values are going to continue to go up. And it's a slow, gradual process. And there's only so much square footage in the Bay Area to go around. And, most of San Francisco is bought up.
I'd probably give Fruitvale about another 5 years before it starts looking a lot like how the Mission is looking now. And just with people moving out of the neighborhood because they can't afford to live there, just being priced out.
The community's always been working hard to get out of poverty and out of crime. It's just they have to be in it. Like, it's a circumstance. It's not a desired, no baby pops out of the womb is like, I want to be a dope dealer. It's kind of like our responsibility as people from this area to fight to keep the identity of this area for decades on to come, because who knows really what's going to happen in 20 years. But the life and the blood that has been in this community should not die out because of that.
sucked and